Imagine the surface of the ocean at night, calm and silver under the moon. The waves breathe quietly, rising and falling, carrying secrets in their depths. Somewhere far below lies not just coral and stone, but the remains of machines that once touched the sky. There are spacecraft down there, whole capsules that carried people into orbit, booster stages that thundered at launch and then fell back, satellites that once sang across space before sinking into silence beneath the waves. The ocean floor is littered with fragments of our spacefaring history, a museum that no one can visit. To know this is to feel both wonder and melancholy, for these machines once reached for the stars, only to end in the quiet dark of the sea. Since the beginning of the space age, rockets have needed safe places to fall. Every launch is not just one rocket, but several stacked together. The upper stage carries the payload to orbit, while the lower stages fire briefly and then detach. They cannot return gracefully. Their trajectories are planned to end in the ocean, where the chance of harming people is lowest. Over decades, thousands of tons of hardware have rained down into the water. We do not often think about it, but the ocean is a graveyard of space travel. Some of these wrecks are close to shore. During the Mercury and Gemini programs, astronaut capsules returned to Earth by parachute, splashing down into the Atlantic. Navy ships waited nearby, accompanied by helicopters, search planes, and recovery teams. When the parachutes opened, sailors cheered. When the spacecraft struck the water, divers leapt in, attaching flotation collars and signaling to hoist the capsule onto the deck of a carrier. The astronauts inside were often pale and tired, but they smiled as they emerged, welcomed back with handshakes and embraces. Not every capsule was recovered so smoothly. Liberty Bell 7, the second American spacecraft flown by an astronaut, filled with water after splashdown in 1961 and sank before recovery crews could save it. Gus Grissom, the astronaut inside, escaped, but his capsule lay on the seabed for decades before it was finally found and raised in the 2000s. Its metal was corroded, its instruments ruined, yet it told a story that had almost been forgotten. Other capsules were lost too, slipping under the waves before recovery teams could catch them. Those spacecraft still rest on the seabed, visited only by fish and currents. Each one carries the story of a journey into orbit, preserved in silence beneath the water. Later, the Apollo program left even more hardware in the ocean. The mighty Saturn V rocket launched in 3 stages. The first 2 stages always fell back, crashing into the Atlantic. Some exploded on impact. Others survived in large chunks, scattering debris fields that may still lie undiscovered. For decades, no one searched. Then, in the early 2000s, a private expedition led by Jeff Bezos sent deep-sea submersibles to recover F-1 rocket engines from Apollo missions. They lay 3 miles underwater, corroded but recognizable. Pulled to the surface, they were displayed as relics, reminders of how human ambition leaves traces in unexpected places. These engines, once wrapped in fire, had found a final home in silence. But the Atlantic is only part of the story. As launches grew more frequent, planners sought a safer, emptier target. They chose a remote patch of the Pacific known as Point Nemo. It is the oceanic pole of inaccessibility, the point farthest from any land. It lies between New Zealand and South America, more than 1,000 miles from the nearest shore. Hardly anyone passes through. That made it the perfect target zone for spacecraft disposal. Since the 1970s, space agencies have guided defunct satellites and sent stations to fall there. When the Russian space station Mir was retired in 2001, it was guided into this region. For 15 years, it had been home to cosmonauts, scientists, and international guests. It circled the Earth more than 86,000 times. Then, after its final deorbit burn, it streaked into the atmosphere. People in Fiji and Tonga watched fiery trails cross the sky, the last visible moments of a station that had once represented Soviet pride. What survived fell into the emptiness of the Pacific, vanishing beneath the waves. Dozens of other spacecraft have followed. Cargo ships, upper stages, and satellites are no longer useful. Even the International Space Station, after its long service, is expected to be guided into Point Nemo when its time comes. Imagine that descent. Modules breaking apart, solar arrays burning, fragments scattering like sparks, all of it falling into the same quiet water. Point Nemo has become a cemetery for space. To imagine the cemetery is to picture the ocean floor as a place of quiet monuments. Capsules half buried in silt, tanks dented and twisted, antennas reaching uselessly upward. Fish swim through the open hatches. Barnacles claim the smooth surfaces. Currents sweep sand across insignias and serial numbers. There are no plaques or labels, no guides to explain which wreck is which. Yet each piece of metal was once part of a mission that began with fire and noise, cheered by crowds and tracked by instruments, only to end here in the deep. The practice of ocean disposal was practical, not poetic. Rockets must fall somewhere, and oceans cover most of the planet. The remote Pacific offers safety. Debris burns as it falls, but some fragments always survive. By steering them to empty waters, agencies minimize risk. But with each deliberate plunge, another chapter of exploration vanishes beneath the waves. Unlike museums where spacecraft are displayed and remembered, the ocean hides them, erasing them from public memory. People know the names of Apollo, Gemini, and Mir, but they rarely think about where the hardware went afterward. There are other, stranger stories. In the early space age, both the United States and the Soviet Union lost secret satellites that were never officially acknowledged. Some fell into the ocean and were quietly recovered by specialized ships. Others may still lie undiscovered, their classified instruments rusting in salt water. These relics of Cold War competition remind us that space exploration was not only about science, but also about strategy and power. The ocean floor keeps those secrets as well. Even today, launches contribute new wreckage. SpaceX boosters often land on barges, but many upper stages still fall uncontrolled. Chinese rockets, European rockets, Indian rockets, they all use oceans as disposal zones. Each launch leaves a faint echo in the sea. The accumulation is invisible to us, yet vast in scale. Imagine the number of missions since Sputnik, each one leaving behind fragments. The ocean has quietly become an archive of human reach, scattered in pieces across its bed. There is a paradox here. Spacecraft are built with extraordinary care, designed to withstand vacuum, heat, and radiation. They are testaments to engineering. Yet, in the end, many are abandoned. They rust like any shipwreck. Saltwater claims them without hesitation. Some may last centuries before dissolving, but eventually they all will. The ocean is patient. It takes even our greatest machines and folds them into itself. The thought is humbling. We imagine space travel as heroic, a march of progress. Yet its artifacts are not only in museums or monuments, but also in these forgotten graves. They remind us that every triumph leaves behind remnants, and not all are preserved. History is written not only in books, but also in the silence of the deep sea. Imagine swimming down through layers of water, light fading, pressure rising, until you reach the resting place of a capsule. The paint is long gone. The metal is scarred. Inside are empty seats, once filled with anticipation and fear. Outside, fish circle, unaware of the journey that ended here. To them, it is just another object in their landscape. To us, it is a time capsule, unreachable but real. Consider also the symbolism of using oceans as the endpoint for space. The sea has always represented mystery, danger, and possibility. Long before rockets, sailors set out across horizons they could not see beyond. Ships were lost, but exploration continued. Now, rockets too end in the sea. It is as if exploration always circles back to water, whether crossing it to find new lands or falling into it after reaching for the stars. There is a certain poetry in this cycle. Fire carries the spacecraft upward, but water receives it in the end. Air and vacuum in between. earthbound factories at the start, and the sea as the final resting place. Elements take turns holding human ambition, each one part of the story. Looking forward, the cemetery at Point Nemo will grow. Satellites will continue to fail. The International Space Station, after decades of service, will one day be guided down. New stations may rise, but they too will eventually fall. Space exploration is not just about reaching outward, but about knowing how to let go, how to retire machines with dignity. The ocean offers a quiet solution, even if it means burying history out of sight. Yet, perhaps that is fitting. Not all history is meant to be displayed. Some of it rests in silence, known only to those who remember. The rockets at the bottom of the sea are like whispers of an earlier time, still present but fading, still shaping the story even as they corrode. They are not gone, only transformed, like everything else that enters the ocean. So when you think of space travel, remember also the sea. Remember that the path to orbit is written not just in stars, but in waves. Remember that for every triumph shown on television, there was a fall into water, a piece of metal sinking into obscurity. Remember that exploration leaves traces everywhere, even in places we never see. Think again of those early recoveries. The images are grainy now, broadcast in black and white, but they show moments of raw humanity. A small capsule bobs in the Atlantic, parachutes floating on the waves. Navy helicopters hover overhead. Divers leap into the sea, attaching bright orange flotation collars. The astronauts inside are weary, shaken from re-entry, but their journey is nearly over. Sometimes they are pulled from the capsule, still in their suits, salt water dripping, smiling weakly at the cameras. The ocean cradled them at the end of their odyssey, as if reminding us that even spacefarers must return to water. It was dangerous work. Waves battered the capsules. Heat shields hissed and steamed when touched by the sea. Once, a capsule sank before it could be lifted, vanishing into the depths. These moments remind us how thin the line is between triumph and loss, and how often the ocean has the final word. It is easy to forget that water has always been our stage for exploration. Long before rockets, sailors pushed their ships across vast oceans, chasing horizons they could not see. Wooden hulls rotted and sank, filling the seabed with wrecks. Today, spacecraft join them. Steel capsules, titanium engines, aluminum tanks, all descending into the same dark quiet. The parallels are striking. Just as archaeologists study old shipwrecks to learn about forgotten voyages, one day, perhaps, historians will study spacecraft lying at the bottom of the Pacific. What would they see? Names and numbers etched into plates, corroded by salt, circular hatches torn open by pressure, machinery half recognizable, half erased. Each object would whisper of ambition and the risks people were willing to take. Point Nemo, the remote cemetery of space, is more than a disposal site. It is a symbol of humility. Mir's fiery re-entry was not only the end of a station, but the end of an era. Observers in the South Pacific saw streaks of light crossing the sky, fading into sparks, then nothing. Beneath the waves, fragments came to rest, unseen. The International Space Station will one day follow. After decades of experiments, astronauts, and countless orbits, it too will be steered into that same remote water. Imagine the final days. Crews departing, modules sealed, controllers on the ground, guiding its orbit lower and lower. Then the final plunge, pieces scattering, solar panels glowing, all swallowed by the Pacific, the greatest human outpost in space, ending in silence under the sea. It is almost poetic. Fire lifts us upward, but water receives us in the end. This duality of elements is worth pausing on. Fire at launch, the roar of engines, the violence of ascent, then the thinness of space, the black vacuum. Finally, descent through air and the embrace of water. Each element takes its turn. Earth builds, air resists, fire carries, space holds, and water claims. Perhaps that cycle is not just practical, but necessary, a reminder that no venture escapes nature. However high we reach, we return to the planet that bore us. Consider how future generations may view these choices. Centuries from now, explorers may dive to the ocean floor with tools more advanced than ours. They may stumble upon the remains of Mir, or fragments of Apollo stages, or perhaps even the carcass of the ISS. To them, these wrecks will be as mysterious as ancient temples. Why were such machines left here? What story do they tell? Perhaps they will see us as ambitious but careless, reaching outward while letting our relics rust in salt water. Or perhaps they will see wisdom in our choice, recognizing that the ocean gave us the safest, quietest cemetery we could find. Either way, these objects will continue to exist long after memory fades. The ocean keeps more than hardware. It keeps memory itself. Waves roll over sunken spacecraft just as they roll over old galleons and warships. Currents sweep across boosters and capsules as though erasing their histories. Yet the truth is not erased. It lingers, waiting for someone to notice. Every piece of metal is a marker of human daring. Every hatch or engine bell is a reminder that we tried, again and again, to reach the stars. The ocean does not care, but it preserves. It waits. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the oceans of the world as vast libraries, their shelves filled not with books, but with spacecraft. Each one tells a story. Each one carries a memory of ambition and courage. They rest quietly now, part of the planet again. And in that quiet, they remind us of something simple, that to reach for the stars is always to accept gravity's pull, always to fall back, and always to leave behind pieces of ourselves in places we never planned. And picture the future. Centuries from now, divers may stumble upon these relics. Explorers of a different kind. They may find fragments of capsules, faded insignias, twisted fuel tanks. They may wonder about the people who built them, about the reasons they were left to the sea. To them, our space age may look like a strange intersection of ambition and carelessness, of genius and forgetfulness. That judgment will belong to them. For us, it is enough to know that these machines still exist, hidden in darkness, waiting quietly. The ocean is not empty. It holds life, currents, and memory. To add spacecraft to its depths is to write another chapter in that story. They will dissolve eventually, but before they do, they will lie as reminders. Not all of space history is in the stars. Much of it sleeps beneath the waves.